Awesome. So we are going to talk about Web2 to Web3, bringing brands. So the first question I have is like, some of these fashion brands are purely focused on broadening the audience. I was just speaking to someone who was expressing interest into going to these existing metaverses like Roblox and Dcentral, and not so interested into like having their own curated metaverse on their own website. So there are different perspectives out there about whether you should focus on your existing audience or go for the new audience and broaden and go for the younger generation. I'm curious, Rebecca, what do you think about that? Start with introducing yourself and then tell us more about your perspective.
Thank you, Nico. So I'm Rebecca Kaida. I have a company called Visical, which is virtual and physical, largely because I hated the word phygital. It sounded very strange, although physical, honestly, doesn't sound that much better. But so we get this question quite a bit with brands that we work with. So we work with many luxury brands, not just fashion, but a lot of them will say, is it valuable for us to go into Sandbox or into Dcentral? And in early 2018, when I did my first luxury NFT prototype, if you will, Dcentral first came out, and I was so excited. I'm like, that's in the right direction. Like, I don't know if it's the thing, but it's in the right direction. But I'd love a show of hands to interact with the audience. How many people here play Roblox? How many people play Dcentral? How many people play Sandbox?
Should we call it playing?
Oh, it's like kind of a game. I don't know, using it. Who's living inside of these platforms? So my point of this is that there isn't a ton of audience there yet, right? And largely it's kind of the chicken and egg thing. It's like no one really was using Instagram when there was nobody on it, right? Or Snapchat. They're like, this is funny novelty. But until you get that critical mass, you get that sticky product where people are like, I can't not be on this because everyone I know is on it. So the conversation with brands is largely like, if you are a brand, if you have website traffic, right? If you're having, 10, 20, a million people visit your site every month, then you should probably lean into your own audience. So you should probably put together campaigns that actually resonate with those audiences and not focus on this Web3 community. Because like Web3 people are normal people, right? We're all people. So maybe we have a Web3 affinity, but just because I like Dcentral doesn't mean that, I'm not going to like anything else, right? Especially if it's a brand that I care about. So that's why I'm a firm believer in doing things that are like what Nico works on with her company, Chief Metaverse Officer, that are doing bespoke kind of pixel stream metaverse environments that are fully branded for the brand. That's my answer there. That's my long-winded answer there. So
thank you.
Thanks for staying with me.
Yeah, the way we look at it is like an evolution of your existing e-commerce, which is a very different perspective from going to a whole other new platform where you need the education. And I think that's why brands are avoiding doing a lot of metaverse activations, because they have to do that education part, which is not easy, and they don't want to do that. They don't want to dedicate resources. They see it as a risky action. So when we look at this aspect of bringing brands into Web3, there are different perspectives, different aspects we can look at it. There are certain activities that brands have been doing that could continue, and there are certain things that they need to change and stop or modify. So I would love to hear from Patricia in terms of what are some of the things that you see brands can continue doing and still valid in the Web3 compared to Web2, and introduce yourself as well.
Hello, how are you? My name is Patricia Gloom. I'm co-founder of Brohaus. We are a Web3 creative studio, and we represent digital artists, ranging from 3D fashion digital artists to contemporary digital artists. And and to answer your question, how I see brands, like what they keep doing is mainly to continue doing amazing, beautiful campaigns, but then they have to adapt to all these new platforms that are coming in, which is all these new technology in Web3, and it's like how to approach in another way and create content in this way to actually attract. And it's like in Web2, for example, there was like this whole evolution and revolution of social media. So you had all these brands that had to adapt to new formats and short video formats, for example, or being in touch with influencers in order to create different types of fashion campaigns to attract these new audiences. So now actually is more, you have to get yourself more into create your own metaverses using, for example, spatial. Yeah. And then as well, hiring different types of designers, because there's incredible 3D designers out there that actually create in different ways and that are more experimental. And so fashion brands can use and leverage those type of artists and create their own collections with them to then adapt to this new way of creating that we need to be more sustainable. Because when you create that way, you just use less fabric, and then there's other ways of collaboration that come out. So that's actually extremely interesting.
Awesome. So you touched on collaborating with artists. I would love to hear from other Rebecca on, as an artist, how do you see partnership with brands? What should brands look into when they are partnering, and like what do you recommend them continue doing, and what maybe they should not do from the perspective of an artist?
Yeah, that's a great question.
And introduce yourself.
I'm Rebecca Rose. I'm an artist on SuperAir. My focus is holograms, actually bringing the physical into the digital, and then the digital back into our physical realm as holograms in our like IRL interaction with the digital. I think brands are really going to, of course, what they've been doing, like entering the Web3 space. A lot of them have dropped 10K projects, but that's not going to be enough. We're not going to tolerate that, like, minimal effort for much longer. I think that brands that, and I'm biased because I do work with the DigiFizzy hybridization, I think that brands that really utilize digital technology within their physical clothing that then have a NFT Web3 component with utility attached to it, I think those are going to be the brands that stick out long term, because yes, there are people that still use Dcentral that go to Sandbox and Roblox and all of the metaverses, but the majority of our time is not there. The majority of our time is in the real space with real people, with real fashion. And the digital component, like to actually have it in with the physical, that's what's going to really draw people into like the digital fashion, to have that bridge, to be walking down the street, having a hologram, like a hologram element on your clothing or a digital element on your physical clothing, and having strangers walk up to you and ask you what it's about. That's what the brands need to focus on, is having that kind of crossover start to attract that mainstream adoption into Web3.
Thank you. And now what should we avoid? I know Jessica is kind of critical of the metaverse perspective, so I would love to hear I would love to hear the areas that brands should do better. And please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Jessica Greenwald. I'm a creative director over at Vayner3, which is Gary Vaynerchuk's Web3 studio, or consultancy, is what we call it. I've had to work with many brands at this point. We've experimented with a variety of things, not crapping on the metaverse anymore. There's some brands that really want to play in that space, and if they want to play in that space, then we help them do it, right? But the biggest thing I think brands don't give enough credit to is, or they heavily weight the audience of a traditional artist or artist they're used to collaborating with for their campaigns or for their products in a, let's call it, normal world. I know earlier you said that Web3 people are normal people. I feel a little differently. I think there's something a little bit wrong with us, that that we are willing to jump through as many hoops as we are to just buy a thing, and then buy a thing to have the right to buy a thing. We're kind of crazy like that. We do some weird stuff. We're not the normal consumer, and we're talking about big fashion brands that are dealing with normal consumers, bigger audience base, and a lot of brands think that if they bring in the artist that has a huge following on social media, that following will translate and will sell out their digital collectibles or whatever Web3 related campaign that they're working on. I've seen that not happen time and time again, and is the big reason why we tend to recommend that you work with an audience that has a built-in community that understands the space. So there's a variety of artists who have successfully transitioned into Web3, and what happens when those artists successfully transition into Web3 is you have a built-in collector base or supporter base. These artists usually understand that it's all about building a community and having that support network around them that wants to see them succeed. So you can't just dump a traditional artist into that space and expect them to sell out whatever it is you're producing. That's the biggest flop that I see. It's always a shock to the people who know that artist because they've seen it work so well in the past, and it does not usually successfully translate into the Web3 space.
Why is that? Is it because that artist or influencer is not educating their audience? Like, is not taking this step? Because I think brands are expecting that influencers are already great at education.
That's part of it, right? Like, we'll have some influencers or some artists, some celebrities who aren't going to sit there and host like a AMA or post a walkthrough video of how to make a wallet. They don't have that time. They're not even setting up their own wallet, right? Like, they have people for that. So they're not going to do that. That's one side of it. But then there's also the fact that the people who are just passively following them on Instagram and liking their content and maybe buying it when it's buying their merchandise when it's easy to buy, that's a different type of person than the person who's going to be like, all right, I'm going to learn a whole new specialty and set up a crypto wallet and then set up an exchange and then transfer assets to, like, the 20 different steps you have to go through. Those are not the same people. Most people aren't willing to do that.
Yeah, and I'd like to add on to that as well. I love to say, this is my hot take, that the celebrity is dead. I really think that celebrity is dead, and it's all about micro-influencers, people that have super passionate audiences. They might be significantly smaller, but they are going to go through those hoops because they have that one-on-one exchange, right? There's still kind of the layer between, but what younger audiences are kind of expecting from not only their heroes, if you will, or their new celebrities, which are these influencers and their creators and brands, is that they have that consistent dialogue, that they can reach out to them and they're going to get a response, right? Even if it's just like, hey, I've read through the comments, guys, everyone wants this, like, I've heard you, let's do it. The modern, the legacy celebrities are never going to do that. They're like, I've got my agent, you can talk to my agent, my PR person, I've got my people, and like, maybe you'll see me walking out of at a red carpet, but that's it. And I just think that doesn't work anymore, right? It's like, it is not something that excites a fan. You know what? The fan feels neglected. And so I think that's one of the most interesting experiences that I've had working in this space over the past couple of years, because I've had the same experience.
Yeah, for sure. The approachability and accessibility of the person that consumer wants to support is a big deal. So when we're dealing with these big celebrities who are like, oh, I don't have time for that, or like, I'm just not going to do that, I don't even know how to do that, right? Then we just see whatever program get put out not work. The audience doesn't respond well to it. The expectations are very different in the space than they were in the legacy celebrity world.
So then, how do they build the community that is needed for this Web3 activation? Do you recommend anything to the brands? Like, if it's not through the influencers or celebrities, like, how else? Are they gonna just go start their Discord and act like a Web3 native brand and start from scratch? Like, what is then actionable?
It depends on the brand, right? Like, some brands are totally comfortable hopping into a Discord and running that show. Most of the brands that I've interacted with are not about that. But we do explain that this involves interaction from you. You have to be accessible to the consumer. They want to feel like they're a part of this conversation. It's a conversation, not a monologue, right? And they want to have some sort of element of seeing their influence incorporated into whatever it is you're doing. So we set the expectation that this takes a lot more engagement, like you're saying, that legacy experience is dead.
Oh, well, I'm going to jump ahead to one of my other questions, which was specifically luxury or brands rather that have done it well. And Nico and I were talking about this earlier. Everyone talks about, Nike and Artifact, like what a success story, right? But one that I think is probably a little bit lesser known is the Lacoste Web3 exercise, which I thought that they were quite fearless and that they're like, we're going to do it. We've got a Discord. They got, tens of thousands, I think 50,000 plus. Last time I checked, which was yesterday, there were like 3,700 people online. I don't know how many of those are bots or how much is fake. There's a lot of that in this world. So, caveat there. But I love that they had kind of dove in, right? They even created a funny name. It's like UNDW3, which is pronounced underwater. I don't know how they got there, but great. And they've done their first drop, which did well, right? I think it was like 11,000 pieces. They did a second drop, which is like a PFP thing. But now on top of that, they also are doing, they did like a Twitter Spaces with Farouk and a few other people in Web3, right? That are like quite notable in Web3. And they're working with, I believe it's Empiria VR to do their virtual holiday store, right? So what I love about that is that, one, they're being fearless. And I think a lot of brands, they hide behind some of these other platforms because if it fails, they can always be like, well, it's the platform's fault, right? Or even, like looking at Bloomingdale's that partnered with Chanel and I'm forgetting everyone. There was like two other brands, but like they can always hide behind Bloomingdale's, right? If the Bloomingdale's things fail, it's Bloomingdale's, not us. But that Lacoste really went in there and they're like, we're going to do the drops, we're going to do unlocks. We've got the Discord. We're talking to Web3 people, but we're letting our audience, the Lacoste fans, be involved, right? They had the ability to actually vote on kind of merchandise and design choices, which is very cool when you think about a brand welcoming in their fan base in that capacity. That is frightening, very, very scary. But then also tying it all together in a kind of, computer simulated environment, which is a virtual holiday store, right? Where like the token holders get the access, they have more digital assets. I thought that was quite a more silent one that they're continuing to build on it. It's not like some that I've seen where the brands, they do a drop and they're like, okay, we're out now. Like, see you never. Like, they're constantly building up on it, and I think that that's like a true success story that I'm curious to see how it develops.
Long term, not short term.
Exactly.
Yeah. Rebecca?
Yeah, also another success story I think was Coach, and that's something that Vayner had worked with as well. And the way that it was dropped, it was smooth and sexy. There is nothing sexy about having 20 steps to onboard people into a wallet. I'm telling you. But what they did instead was that they had people claim the NFT and then followed up with the instructions after they had claimed it. And that I think we gotta think about like all of the front end stuff, these 20 steps that are just, we've all been there and it was such a learning curve. If we flip it on its ear and have people and brands like have their followers and fans and people that really enjoy their product claim NFTs first and then give them directions and instructions on what they can do with it and how to do it, that's, I think, is going to be a much more successful and efficient way than starting off with, all right, you got to make a MetaMask. Like, who wants to? That's not sexy. Make it simple and sexy. And I think Coach did that very well with Vayner.
That's the highest compliment I've heard on an onboarding experience, that it was sexy. I'm going to have to tell my coworkers.
So not all the Web 1, Web 2 brands are as big and, as wealthy. We have a lot of small and medium-sized brands that still want to get into this Web3. And I want to hear from Pat, what are your thoughts on some practical steps for smaller and medium-sized brands?
How we see it at Bros is like there's, in a way, 3 types of levels. And then we actually say to the brands that are like small and medium that you can just go with like a very small level. I'm just gonna say really quick the 3 levels and then I'll explain more the level 1. So level 1 would be more like you just make a campaign that looks more Web3, but it's more looking like Web2. So you create 3D assets that look Web3. And then level 2 would be more like you plug and play. You work with other Web3 companies, and then you white label it. So you create for example, Kenzo wants to do a ticketing NFT after party. So then we would partner with a Web3 NFT ticketing company, and then we would create 3D NFT tickets with a 3D fashion artist, and then with that Web3 white label solution. And that will be all under Kenzo. That's what we actually did for Fashion Week in Paris. And so this is a way of like testing a little bit in a small way, but without going and doing like big activations in the Web3. So it's like tatting up. And then the third level would be more like you just do a 360 campaign where you actually really go and create a whole strategy around an NFT drop. How do you make that to be a sellout? How do you engage with the community? How do you onboard all this community in? And how do you create big events in any metaverse that you have available? So I would say small activations. I would say do amazing, cool, creative content that appeals to the young generations, and then small Web3 activations that don't require a lot of risk taker for the brands, because at the end of the day, all this experimentation costs money, and so what they don't want is to lose a lot of money. So these small activations allows to try and test, and then slowly get into the Web3 activation space.
Talking about a small, big activation, and I think a sexy onboarding experience. We just released with Salesforce the Crown Royal, That Deserves a Crown campaign during the football game on Thursday. And it's one of those situations where you click a button, you sign up. There's a little bit of a age gating because it's alcohol related. So you fill out your information, and a wallet is generated based on the email address that you inputted. A crown gets dropped into that. Super simple, right? Like very easy. We don't even say the word NFT at all. A woman came onto the field and said, claim Crown Royals first digital collectible. And it was really easy to send out the link and for anyone to claim it just the same way you would deal with a Web2 solution. So that is a great example of kind of testing the waters, if you will, with a simple drop and seeing how that performs, and then being able to build on top of that.
I agree. Wait, one thing I'll add on is I just love the renaming of things. Like NFT, no, but digital collectible, yes. It's like metaverse, no, but we want to have like a
world,
or game world, yeah. It's hilarious to see that these words get so supercharged, and then we just have to make up. Well, there's another way to describe it. People are like, okay, cool, I'm so on board. But
wait, is there a replacement for metaverse?
I mean, I think
virtual
so. Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I mean, everyone thinks Meta owns the metaverse. I mean, it's crazy. I don't know. I just like a.
People ask me, do I work for Meta? That's definitely a no-go. So we talk about all of these aspects of brands getting into Web3. The question that I usually get is about the ROI or KPIs. And I would love to hear from all of you guys, maybe some quick answers on how do you define the ROI or KPI that brands should look for at this very moment?
Oh, that one. I love this one because it's so, the debate of what is the difference? Like, what are Web3 KPIs versus Web2? And really the only one that I can think of is like number of unique wallets, right? Or gathering wallets themselves.
But that's like an email address.
It is.
Same
It is.
thing.
It is very similar, but it is still a new data point. So there is value in collecting any new data point. And the way that I explain it to brands is just generally like when you do a small test, right? And this is kind of like just an example is you create a virtual experience, and whoever goes through that, right? Like there are unique identifiers. They will get a custodial wallet, right? But they'll get an address. They will be airdropped a digital collectible, and then by nature you can then gather a database of people that are both that they're either Web3 or immersive technology proficient people, right? They know how to navigate a virtual space, and they also have an affinity for your brand or product or service. So that way you can actually, build up upon this and say, all right, well, who are these people? Do we have enough of them? How can we continue to communicate with them by dropping more things to this wallet? Can we then, justify adding additional expenditure to grow these campaigns? So that for me, I think is such a great way of starting. So that's always my go-to kind of KPI, and anything shoppable, right? If you can make a metaverse shoppable, there's a very clear ROI on that. How many sales did you make?
Initially, and this is even prior to working with Vayner, I worked for a couple different crypto organizations behind the scenes. And as a user experience researcher, I was nervous about not having demographic information on the consumer or on the user, because a lot of what we used to do was designed around who we think that user is, like building a profile about that user and then designing a product that encourages a particular behavior, right? Usually buying something. And in this world I got dumped into, I have no information on the user because a lot of people are anonymous. They're just wallet addresses. I have like a string of characters. And initially I was a little concerned, right? Like, well, how do we function like that with very little data? But it soon became apparent that was actually more revealing, because then you get actual purchasing history, what they're interested in buying, how much money they have in that wallet. So in some cases you can price things precisely to how much you think a consumer would be willing to spend based on the access to capital that they have, and then the inflows into that wallet. So collecting wallet addresses is actually super helpful and really enlightening for a brand. You can see someone's pattern of behavior, not just self-reported through a survey or how much of a fan they claim to be. You could see how they put their money where their mouth is.
What if they have several wallets?
What if you have what?
Several wallets.
I mean, a lot of people do. Like you can, so this gets into the identity thing that I always think about when it comes to living in the Web3 world. Like, what if you have a wallet that's purely for brand consuming, right? Like, this is my, I don't know what you want to call it, like super poppy girl lifestyle wallet, right? And then I have a different wallet for, who knows, whatever, like my super art collector, right? Like my car collector, whatever. Yeah. So those are different profiles, right?
Consumers,
super
right?
users. Like, how many people have like more than 10 wallets? We got 3 people. All right, got 4 people.
Even
right, you anons.
we will change data, the data that we are referring to. But I understand your perspective. So it's much more than just an email address, because you're looking at their spending power and
how many crypto dick butts they have.
It's publicly showing all of your
behavior,
bank
accounts, and behavior
on the internet for anyone to look up. So it's not like the brand even has to do anything special. They just have to access that wallet, know that it purchased an NFT from them, or is even holding an NFT from them now.
So you think that's the strongest ROI for brands?
Well, like you're saying, I think brands would like to eventually just make money. Yes. So
cool. And you guys?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's personally hard to evaluate the KPI, because this space is so new, and it's like really, this is about experimenting and trying. What I can say is that what we do is with each client that we have, we send a questionnaire, and then in the questionnaire we evaluate exactly what are their needs and what is their goal and what do they want to achieve with whatever activation they want to do. For example, when we work with Hogan, it's a shoe brand, they wanted to do a sellout. And they also wanted to do a campaign that had amazing digital artists on it, that were true digital artists that were doing digital art for many years, and that looked so good that then they decided to create the shoe in physical, and so then they created a whole event in their stores in Italy, where all these shoes were able to be created in physical. And that sellout happened in 3 days thanks to Exclusible and their whole community, and connecting as well with the community of Hogan. So really each brand has their own success little story, and some brands can as well. They want maybe to do a PR successful campaign, and it's just purely for PR and nothing else. So yeah, that would be my answer.
I think the best ROI is legacy, because numbers aside, numbers is the easy answer, right? if you think about long-term legacy to where your brand, your product, your NFT, your artwork, whatever, becomes part of the cultural zeitgeist, like in a household name, the numbers are going to come with that. Focus on that. Focus on somehow like making that ROI not about the numbers and about that becoming a household name, because the numbers will automatically follow. I think that's the best ROI.
But I think it's very hard to convince brands.
I know, it's a little rose-colored glasses.
I like it. I think it's a beautiful answer.
It's our wish list. So I want to end with this question of your wish list. If brands had no resistance or limitation, what would you want to see from them?
Oh my God, all I want is to purchase, because I like nice things, I do, and I make money and I spend money on it. But the problem for me that is so annoying is that if theoretically my closet burned down, I would have to go to the insurance company and be like, well, I swear I had this and it was this much and I bought it then at this store and I swear I had this. And like they want pictures and they want proof of how much it costs, where did you buy it from, whatever. And that doesn't exist. So I just want a freaking digital receipt for my product. I want my product to be on the blockchain, immutable, there it is. And ideally I want a consumer facing experience, whether it come to life in AR or I can take it into a virtual reality experience or something. But the fact that that doesn't exist is horrendous, right? And then having the ability to resell with confidence. But this was my most unfortunate reaction in a meeting was I was at a very large luxury conglomerate and they said, and you've heard this before, Nico, they said, well, maybe I don't want to do that because maybe I want someone to buy a fake bag on Poshmark and then never again try and buy on the secondary market and only ever come into my store. And I think that is such a horribly backwards state of thinking, right? Because we as consumers spend a lot on crap, right? I want a lot of crap. And if I want to sell that crap, let me sell that crap with confidence and not try and throttle that so I can only go to your store again. That's my wish list.
I like that, actually, being able to, I'm so torn on having all my assets tracked. There's something that makes me really uncomfortable and nervous about that, and I know that's super counterintuitive for someone who works in the space. But wish list, if we're talking specifically fashion, we're talking about what's actually achievable in this moment, I would love to personally see more engagement from fans from a brand, like a fashion brand, and let me influence the design a little bit. Let me contribute to what I think would be a cool outfit, or at least get my input on things, because there's a lot of brands that I love that don't necessarily work for, petite women like myself. And if they knew how strong of a demand there was from people like myself, then they might actually build the products that I like. In the long term, I am long on the metaverse. I love the idea of it eventually providing an experience that we can't experience in this physical reality. What do you call this now if you're working in the metaverse?
IRL?
IRL, yeah. Something that's better than IRL. That's when I would get really excited about the metaverse, because then it's not even just
things that are not possible.
Things that are not possible, yeah. Exactly. It's not just like I don't know what you want to call it, a not suitable current replacement for whatever's happening in real life. It would actually just be something you can't do here, right? So that's on my wish list to eventually happen.
Nice. I think I wanna meet my girlfriends in the metaverse and do shopping with them. Because right now I'm shopping on Instagram sometimes.
That's not so hard.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be in the wish list.
Yeah. And so I want to be like, hey, Carla, let's go to the Balmain experience, and then just go in there, experience Balmain world, because all these fashion brands have amazing things to experience, and instead of being in a 2D screen, and then inside of there, actually go and meet the designer that is going to be there as an avatar, and I can actually connect with that designer person, and maybe there's he can see me or she can see my face, and we can both see each other and really connect and start talking fashion or talk about the collection, and maybe he might give me or she give me a pop or a little NFT drop because I talked to that person in their world.
I think, and this is not a very like fancy answer, but I think we're going to start seeing, and I want to see this, we're going to start seeing like certificates of authenticity when you buy designer bags as digital NFTs, and then there's going to be like a chip embedded into the bag, so that way it's, you know, forever paired with that NFT. That's why I'm surprised we're not seeing enough of that right now, to be honest, because it's totally doable. I mean, that's not even like, you know, pie in the sky thinking, 5-year plan from now. This can be, it's achievable today, but we're not seeing that. So I'm going to keep that answer and say, like, that's what I want to see.
Thank you so much. Any final notes? Any alpha you want to share?
I feel like Nico is going to make our wish list come true.
Yes, that's the hope. No pressure.
Taking notes. No, we will make it together. This is what collaboration is all about. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Nico.
Amazing.
Thank you, Nico. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.